Databases traditionally are no fun to work with, but I just tried this brand new database called Zeta, and I'm super excited about it. I'm going to share with you 5 things that I'm most excited about with this database. What's up, everyone? My name is James Q. Quick, and I do weekly videos on web development related topics, and I focus a lot on JavaScript. I do a lot of VS Code stuff, but I mainly just care about like enabling developers to build application, helping them learn about different technologies and things they can use to build stuff. Because as developers, I think that's the most exciting thing. So there's this new database. I've actually heard about it for a while, but they just officially launched on Product Hunt, and now is my time to actually dive in and check it out. So database is called Zeta. You can find it at zeta.io. Tagline is think data, not databases, and they kind of kick you off with a lot of the buzzwords here in the description. So serverless database, one of the cool things about this, we'll kind of see this in a second. You create a brand new database with click of a button, it's up and running to go, and you don't have to worry about the backend. You don't have to choose and configure servers or what size of a server or VM you're going to use. Like all that stuff is just done for you. It's got built-in search, which is pretty cool. Analytics. It's got one API. They've got type-safe client libraries. This is super important. All the people that are getting into TypeScript now, I love this. I love TypeScript. I'm using it more and more and more and more and more. So they've got that built in. They've got some cool things around development workflow. So let's just see really quickly what this looks like. So I'm inside of here a demo table. So this is, they give this to you from scratch. So this is the post table that they create. And you can see this has a visual aspect to it. So this is the first thing that I'm really excited about, is basically having a GUI around the data. Now, I used something called Airtable for a long time because it had very similar benefits, had a great looking UI. You can do everything in the UI, you can share with people, etc. And Zeta seems to do all of that stuff as well, in addition to having, in my mind, better support for developers, because Airtable was not necessarily geared towards developers. Zeta is, and that's why I'm really excited about it. So the GUI here is really, really good. I created this table. It literally took like a couple of seconds to populate it with dummy data, obviously. But you can see we've got 2 tables, posts and users, and we've got all the different types of columns that you would expect: ID, title. Do labels in here, which are multi-select. So if I wanted to add another one in here, I could just type that in. It's got a slug, and then it has a reference to the author. So you can reference different properties of the author in here as well. So these are coming from this users table. If we look in here, we have name, email, bio, etc. So it has the relationships. You can easily add columns. Let's see what kind of column would make sense to add here. I'm making this up, but what if we had a post number, whatever, and just had it be an integer? This is not real, but there it is. Or actually views would be a good metric, but they're already tracking there. So those are all null, but the visual editor, you can see it's really easy to actually visualize your data, also go and customize your data, add properties, add records as well. So if I wanted to add a record, I could just come in here, and that's really nice. Now, as a developer, like the big thing is being able to work with APIs and stuff. So I want to show you a little bit of what they give you from a JavaScript perspective. So this is the code for a tutorial that actually will come out next week. So come back to the channel if you want to see hands-on build an API with Node.js, Express, TypeScript, Zeta, and then Rapid API. So come back next week if you want to check that out. But in this case, this zeta.ts file, it's a TypeScript file. Huge fan of TypeScript. It's auto-generated for you, and it takes care of the configuration for this, and it also takes care of the types to the extent that when I then go into my API and work with the Zeta client, so I call that get client function that they generate for me, and I come in and do Zeta.db. Notice that I have a reference to this job table. So it's got the typings for the tables and the columns associated with that. So if I go back to the JQQ job board, this is just for demos, but that's the data that I have there. So in the code, again, I can just reference job. I also then have types for jobs, and you can see I reference these in my responses. So here's the response that I'm sending back. In the post is I'm going to send back a job or an array of jobs in the GET request and so on. So you have the typings, you get TypeScript definitions for all the functions that you would want to call. So let's say instead of get all, I wanted to do pagination. I can do get paginated, etc. And they have the documentation around parameters and all those things, which is great. In a TypeScript focused world, this goes very, very far. It's super, super cool. Another thing that I think is cool, I'm a huge fan of VS Code. If you've watched the channel at all, you 100% know this. And they've got a VS Code extension, which I think is huge. So I can see my job table here, again, associated with this project. I can see the properties or the columns. I could add a column in here. And then I could go and actually visualize the data. So if I click the view button, it's going to open a visualizer, which is great. So I could have this open in VS Code just to see if stuff is coming in there. And then it has a button to take me directly to Zeta, which is really nice too. I'm always a huge fan of VS Code extensions. I feel like just integrating things into the editor, the place where I spend all of my time, is 100% the way to go. So this has been huge. So I think it's super, super cool. The other thing that I didn't mention, and these videos are actually really helpful if you want to go check them out, about branching. I didn't actually talk about branching, but this is such a huge feature in a modern world with DevOps and separating code into branches. Why not have a kind of a parallel thing with your data? That way, you can work on independent sets of data. We've all been there where you copy over a database somewhere else. Well, this is kind of built in where you can create a copy of your database schema, work on that, finish everything, then move that into your master branch or your main branch and be able to test that stuff safely. That is super cool. The other thing that I think is cool, and this is I'm kind of branching out, no pun intended, trying to branch out and figure out what my use cases are going to be for this. But this search is actually really cool. So if you watch this video, like all the records that you might have in there, it's got a search engine to search by all the different records. And you can do some optimizations and stuff too. So that's really cool because that's usually like a completely separate thing that you would have to do. Now with this, it'll show you in a second, and then I can show you in mine. I should have timed this better. But under Get Code Snippet, you can do all these properties and things and like select specific columns and deselect columns and do filters, and then it will generate the code for you. And that's really cool because I could do the same thing in here. So you see if I wanted to query all records, this is what they would look like. I wonder if I then did a reverse or did a sort and I sorted by, I don't know, let's do geography as something different. Notice it sorted those, and then the Get Code Snippet here, this should take into account geography. That was actually one of my biggest pain points with Airtable, was being able to do queries where I feel like their syntax wasn't standardized by any means and the documentation wasn't that great around it. So now I've got something that has like just documentation built in. So if I want to do a filter and a select and a deselect and whatever else I want to do, I can just go and generate that code snippet. So anyway, again, databases, not super fun, usually, traditionally, but this I think is combining a lot of the things that developers and just people who work on stuff, it's just combining a lot of the features that people would use. And if you can find that sweet spot of having a GUI, having shared access, having a playground, didn't even talk about playground, being able to visually design your schema, being able to visually see your schema, and you can see relationships and stuff in here. There's so many things that I didn't even get to. So if I go to schema, you can see that we've got relationships here with the author to the user's table. So you can go visualize that stuff. Anyways, I think it's super cool. I think this is the future in a lot of ways of having powerful tools to support code generation, documentation, and TypeScript. Powerful tools to be able to visually view and edit your database. And then powerful tools from a DevOps perspective and from a testing perspective of what in this case is branching, to be able to isolate that stuff and it go really well. So Zeta.io, go and check it out. I'm really excited about it. I will also come back next week, I will have part 1 of a series that's going to use Node.js, Express, TypeScript, Zeta, Rapid API in a small series of creating a backend API from scratch. And it's going to use this. So if you want to see the stuff that I showed you and how to build it, that's what we're going to do. Anyways, I hope you're excited about it. If you haven't checked it out, go and check it out. Go and check it out. And let me know what you're most excited about in the comments below. Thanks for checking out the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.